Hi there, I'm Joe Meling for Weaver Leathercraft. I'd like to welcome you back to this introduction on floral carving. So today we're going to be talking about transferring a pattern. If you haven't taken time to already, be sure to download your corner piece pattern here, and we're going to talk about prepping this pattern and getting it transferred onto the journal kit.
The journal kit we're going to be using today is the small journal kit with the Hermann Oak natural leather.
Let's start by prepping our pattern, and I'm going to just be using a clear packing tape. It works great, and what we're doing is going to protect this pattern to be able to use it over and over again without having to reprint that every time.
The biggest thing we're going to be protecting our pattern from is moisture. So when we transfer this here in a minute, you're going to see that our leather is going to be wet down and there's going to be a lot of moisture in there. Paper naturally is going to draw that moisture out of there. Well, when paper gets wet, it gets soggy, okay? And we don't want that paper to get wrinkled and soggy because it's going to distort our lines for future use and also risk tearing that paper as we go over it with our stylus. So taking the time to tape this pattern over front and back is going to protect it from drawing that moisture in and also protect the top of the paper from your stylus as you're tracing over there, so you can reuse this pattern over and over if you'd like to. Now it's time to trim our edges. You can see this light line right around the outside of your pattern. That's going to be a guide when we go to lay it down to transfer it. So I'm going to trim right along there. I like using a straight edge and a rotary knife. It just makes it really simple to get nice, straight, even lines off of there. And then I'll come back and trim those rounded corners, just so if we're using that as a guide, we can see right there. Now that our pattern is protected and ready to go, I can set this aside and we can move on to our leather. The leather that we're going to be tooling is a thinner leather. So it's going to be really important to avoid stretching and distortion that we prep the back of that. Again, we're going to get our clear packing tape out, the same tape that we covered our pattern with, and we're just going to put one layer all the way across the back of this. Now what that's going to do is it's going to hold the shape of our leather. Okay, it's going to be wet when we tool that leather, and with that moisture in there, as you strike your tools, that leather is going to naturally want to push out to the sides. We don't want it to do that. We want that leather to either push down or pick up. So taping the back of that will help hold that shape with our project as we tool it. After we get our edges trimmed, then we can bring our pattern back over here and see how that's going to sit onto our journal cover.
Now this is set to sit down in this bottom corner here. Now the reason this pattern is just a little bit smaller than the length of here is because this pattern is going to work not only for the small journal kit, but also for your large kit. This is designed where it can turn sideways and be a bottom corner, and then also get mirrored around for a top corner on there as well, creating a nice space in the middle for customizing with brands, initials, or whatever you'd like to put in the middle there. But for the small kit, when our latch comes over, it'll sit right there. So that's going to leave this nice corner up here if you want to customize, put any brands or initials or anything like that up in that corner, that space is left open for you to do that.
Now it's time to prep the top of our leather so it'll take an imprint when we transfer that pattern. I'm just going to use plain water and a natural sponge. We're going to wet down that entire piece. I don't ever want to wet down just a portion of our leather because we want to avoid any water lines or stains as that leather dries out. So we'll get a nice even coverage. We'll be ready to transfer it. I'm going to introduce one more tool called the ballpoint tracing stylus. This is what we'll use to actually transfer the lines from our pattern onto the leather.
Now with your stylus, we're going to follow along and trace every line.
As you go over each line, you don't have to press down super hard. So remember that moisture content we got in the leather. With that being in there, it's going to really take that impression well. the harder you press down, the deeper of an imprint that stylus is going to leave into your leather. Now, I like to have it be deep enough that I can see it, but not super deep that it stays in there if it's off of where I want to be. So this line that we're transferring is going to be a guideline. If something's just a little bit out of whack or I get a little bit off the line, it's not a big deal because I'll clean that up with my swivel knife when we go to cut that in and make sure I have nice smooth lines that follow along where they need to be. You'll also notice up in the corner that I've put a weight down on that pattern. The only purpose of that is just to help hold my pattern in place. As I'm going through and marking my lines, I want to hold my paper down with one hand, and that weight is helping the other side so that it doesn't shift or move around, because I want that held in place. As I get down towards the end, I kind of pick my paper up and look to make sure I got all the lines, and that weight being up there assures me that I can set it right back down in the same place. So always good to check, make sure you have your lines before you take that weight off of there. Now you can see that that leaves just a super nice impression. We'll be able to follow along with that really well when it comes time to cut it in with our swivel knife.
On behalf of Weaver Leathercraft, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to watch this video with me today. Now that we have the pattern transferred onto our leather, I invite you to follow along in this series as we work through all of our tools and bring this corner piece to life. We'll see you next time.